And good evening, and welcome to another edition of Sports Corner. And tonight we have a very special draft show tonight. My guest tonight here is Joe KUKLIS and Avi Greenwald. First, Joe KUKLIS, tell everybody about yourself and what you do, and you're our local draft guru.
Yeah, and Ralph, again, thanks for having me on the show. I'm looking forward to tonight. I own an e-magazine called Draft 412, and it's hyper-focused on the lanes of professional drafts that are interesting to people that live in the 412. So you've got the Steelers, the Pirates, and the Penguins, and then those feeder systems like Pitt, Penn State, and West Virginia. So we write articles about exclusively drafts and/or prospects, and that could be the Indianapolis, division for, the Pirates. It could be, Penn State, West Virginia prospects that get drafted. It could be anything related to the Penguins or the Pirates looking at Dylan Cruz.
To bring a little bit of a national perspective, I have Avi Greenwald with me. He covers Miami Dolphins, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Avi, welcome back to the program.
How you doing? Appreciate having me on.
We're waiting for Leo Haggerty. He's with Amped Up Sports and also the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He's going to bring another national perspective. And by telephone, my co-host, who I didn't forget about, Smokin Jim Frazier. Smokin Jim, welcome to the draft show.
Hey, thanks, Ralph. Can't wait for this one.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And don't forget, next Thursday on PCTV, Channel 21, Comcast 47, Verizon Cable, Joe will be with us in studio with us, Smokin Jim. And also, we have Ray Fittipaldo by telephone next Thursday. Don't forget, Channel 21, Comcast 47, Verizon Cable in Allegheny County, and live on PCTV's Facebook page. And please don't forget to check out my YouTube channel. I have 95 subscribers. I'm looking to get to 100. I only need 5 more now. I was at 6 more, but now it's 5. All right, guys, let's get started with this draft talk here tonight. We'll start with Avi Greenwald. I know you covered the Miami Dolphins. What do you think the Dolphins need, and who do you think they may take in the first round?
Well, first off, let me just speak on a little bit on the free agency the Dolphins had. I think the Dolphins did a phenomenal job in the offseason picking up some free agents, addressing their needs on defense. I really think they did a good job. So what I think they need to do in the draft is they need to surround Tua with some weapons. Maybe get some speed, get some playmakers that could truly help the offense. So with that being said, I think our needs are obviously offensive tackle, running back, and tight end. I think those are our most important needs right now. I think we should address all 3. I think that would be the best thing to address. I've heard recently Chris Greer saying, he did mention that we are going to stick with Austin Jackson at right tackle. So I think that if because we only have a second round pick number 51 and we have a third round pick number 84. So I think that the running backs, if we can't get Jahmyr Gibbs or the other running back, I can't think of his name right now. Excuse me. Who's the other top?
Devin A-Chain, Zach Charbonnet.
Those are guys that I think that we maybe be able to address with our third round pick. But I think where we're at, I think our best thing right now that we're really looking at would be, I think, Darnell Washington. I think that might be the best pick probably that I think would probably slip to us. I think Sam Laporte and Luke Musgrove will probably be picked because of those are your pretty big playmakers. And I think the NFL in this pass-happy league is probably what they're probably looking at. And I think somebody like a Darnell Washington, because he didn't really get much production at Georgia, and there's not much there, but his blocking skills, which I think are above the rest. But I do not think that I think he'll still be on the board because of that asset there. So I think that would be a really good option for us to pick. It could really fit well in our McDaniel system. You get him and Smythe out there blocking for our running backs. You look out; it's going to be some trouble for sure going forward.
All right.
What happens?
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Avi.
No, I'm good.
Okay. Joe KUKLIS, what's your thoughts on the Steelers this year? We I see we signed a ton of free agents, the most in the history so far of the Steelers of most free agent signings before the draft. It's been a long time. And I see Omar Khan, the numbers cruncher, doing his thing as GM, and Andy Weidel is the assistant. I said to everybody, nobody believed me. I said Andy Weidel is a great addition to this staff because of what he did in Philadelphia. So, Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I think you just hit the nail on the head, Ralph. I mean, there was a lot of free agent activity, affordable free agent activity at that. And they went out and got themselves 2 inside linebackers, one from the Dolphins, unfortunately for Avi and the group down there, and another from the Washington Commanders to fill a very big void. I mean, we lost 3 inside linebackers to free agency or just, cap cuts, right? We lost Miles Jack, we lost Spillane, and we didn't want Devin Bush back. So we addressed that in the offseason. We also addressed the offensive guard position. We brought in a starter and one that Weidel was very familiar with, in Philadelphia, and then a backup and Herbig, also coming from Philly, that will give us depth along that line and allow, I think, the Steelers to focus on the tackle position in the draft. But we did lose a starting corner. He's now playing in Detroit and Cam Sutton. But we bought one too with Patrick Peterson. Now Patrick's a little long in the tooth. He's a guy that might be a future Hall of Famer, if not, somebody that would be considered. And he still's got. I mean, last year he did incredibly well, and I think we'll see how it's a little bit different defense than Minnesota was playing. But I think that you asked the question about the draft, and I think when it really boils down to is 3 things, right? I mean, to put this on a whiteboard or a war room board. They need to address offensive tackle, they need to address defensive tackle, and they need to address corner. And I think that they're uniquely positioned in a draft that is deep in all 3 of those positions to get all 3 of those guys by the middle of the second round. And now, in order to get one of the 4 blue chippers, whether it's Paris Johnson, Peter Skoronski, Broderick Jones, or Darnell Wright in round 1, they likely will have to trade up. I think there's going to be a run on tackles from 11 to 16. And they're just going to be just outside that at 17, which is a curse of the Mike Tomlin, hey, I'm never going to have a losing season. Mediocrity breeds losing. You end up drafting 17 overall, instead of just eating it and having a top 10 pick. What's that?
I call him double M, mediocre Mike.
Well, it's look, we're spoiled here, right? I mean, the Steelers are they're football royalty. We're not used to not being in the playoffs, and 9-8 isn't good here. I would venture to guess if you asked a Detroit Lions fan that question, or some other cities, that same question, they would take that in a heartbeat. But like here, the expectation is a minimum. Who we playing in the first round, and did we get a bye, right? And I think that the Steelers have kind of fallen into a position over the last couple of years to just be right in that middle of the pack. So I think in order to get one of those tackles, they're going to need to trade up now. You mentioned the corner before, and you said Joey Porter Jr. when we were off air. He might be around depending on really what New England does and what Washington Commanders do. I think the top 2 corners are going to be off the board, and Devon Witherspoon and Christian Gonzalez are not going to get out of the top 10. And it's going to be too expensive for the Steelers to trade up at 17 to get them. So if they're going to steal a corner in round 1, it's going to either be JPJ, from Penn State, or Deontay Banks from Maryland. My sense is that they leave that for the top of round 2. I think Keely Ringo slides by. He will be a great bump and run guy in this defense. He's a Patrick. I mean, look, technique can be taught. I know everybody's worried about his hips. It's not really, okay. It's something that he can learn in the pros. The guy's got 4.36 speed. He's got 6'3" height. He's long. He's a perfect cornerback. You just need to get him to be able to turn better and not lose momentum in those turns. So if that's going to cost him a first-round pick and he's sitting for us at the top of the second round, I'll take that any day and twice on Sundays. And I think they really spend round 1, looking at that tackle position. And so whether it's one of those top 4 guys or maybe they trade down and wait and grab an Anton Harrison from Oklahoma, later in the first round, I think that's a possibility as well. And I think with that second pick in the second round, they address defensive line, whether that's Mozzie Smith from Michigan, go blue, by the way, or Keon Wright or like a White from Georgia Tech.
I like
a lot of guys that are going to slip to that middle pick at 49 that the Steelers can use to plug into that 3-4 or 3 technique position. And look, DeMarvin Leal might come around this year. He was a rookie last year, started coming on at the end of the year, and with Larry Ogunjobi re-signing, and you got Cam, Hayward still around. I think the real position they need is that zero technique with a nose guard, right? So I think they're going to look at Brian Frazier or somebody like that if they gets into the top of the second round.
Yeah, they signed that guy from the LA Chargers. They signed that what is it, that Oinoko or something? Yeah, I like him.
Yeah, I mean, and again, that's nice depth.
Right.
I think that might be this day one starter, but if we find someone in rounds 2 or 3, which is a perfect place to go look for a nose tackle, I think that this draft has plenty, and that person will eventually slide into the starting role.
Smokin' Jim Frazier, what's your thoughts, and what do you think the Steelers need to do? I know what you're going to tell us, so go ahead. I'll let you tell them instead of me.
Well, I tell you what, man, I enjoy listening to the guests, man. That outstanding information. But I think the draft will be a total bust if with the 17th pick, the Pittsburgh Steelers don't draft Jordan Addison. And the reason I say that, if Kenny Pickett is your franchise quarterback, and I'm not sure he is, he's already came out on record that said he wants Jordan Addison. So I think you got to give your quarterback every opportunity to be successful. He only threw 7 touchdown passes last year. I think that the Addison is very worthy of a mid-first round pick. He's a former Biletnikoff Award winner. He was the lead receiver in the Pac-10 last year. I think that the question mark is going to be, what does the Steelers do with the 32nd pick? Don't forget now,
right?
Probably a lot of teams are going to want to trade for that pick.
Yes.
For the simple reason, it's a first-round pick, but it's a second round, and you don't have to pay that 5th-year option to the rookie. So, so a lot of teams are going to really like that. And don't forget, it's a second-day pick. So it's the first pick on Friday. So nobody that has that pick should blow it. I don't think the Steelers are traded because of Mike Tomlin's ego. Hey, it's going to be the big show on Friday to start everything off, man. And Mike Tomlin's going to love all that attention. But I would take, with that second pick, the 32nd pick, I would go to Iowa and take Jack Campbell, middle linebacker, 6'5", 250 pounds. I tell you what, if you ever watch film on him, everybody he hits goes down. He doesn't miss tackles. He's a big-time hitter. He's a leader in that middle. At 6'5", that's what you're really looking for in a 3-4 middle linebacker. And that would be who I would pick with the second pick.
All right. I have my draft here, and I'm going to give you what I have. And then we're going to get back to Avi, because I want to ask Avi a question about the Dolphins. First, I'll ask Avi the question. If the Miami Dolphins were to draft the tight end in the first round, because you said that's one of their needs, you think they go for baby Gronk?
Are you talking about Darnell?
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, 6'7", guy from Georgia. This guy's a beast. He's such a blocker. Like I said, I think somebody like himself coming in and blocking for what kind of scheme we got going on, coming out in a 2 tight end set, I really think he could really help tremendously immediately. I really think he would be a great pick. Now, obviously, I don't think trading up to get another pick to try to get one of those running backs would be the smartest thing. Maybe trading up a couple picks if you're starting to get scared that Darnell might not drop. But I really believe if they can get that guy at that pick at 51, I think that would be a home run pick right there for sure. I think that guy can have a really good chance at having a good career.
That's great. Thanks, Avi. You're watching Sports Corner here tonight. We're having a special draft show. I had a bunch of guests lined up. Some guys had some prior obligations. We may be joined later on in the next half hour or so by Keith Platt from Platt's Point of View on Channel 21. He told me he might not make it, but he's going to try. So we'll give him the benefit of the doubt. I think he may be here later on, probably around 9 o'clock maybe, or something like that. He had to go to a training class at the TV station. So there we are. All right, let me give you my draft here. I think in the first round, we discussed this off air with Bobby and Joe. I'm looking at Joey Porter, Deontay Banks, and then in the second round, the first pick I'm looking at is Jordan Addison, and then in the second round B, Cody Mock, offensive tackle, North Carolina State or North Dakota State, excuse me. And then number 3, Izzy Abandakanda, running back, Pitt. And then number 4, I am looking at Jack Campbell, because I just looked at a couple publications and some mock drafts. They got him falling to the 3rd or 4th round. I'm taking Jack Campbell. And then in the 7th round, because we don't have a 5th and 6th round pick yet, unless they make some kind of deal. I'm hearing some stories. We may trade down on the second in the second round and get some extra picks. I'm hearing that story, but we'll see where that goes. My 7th round pick is DJ Dale, defensive tackle at Alabama. All right. Does you guys have any questions about that? How about you, Avi? We'll start with you.
Not really. I mean, it sounds good for me, for sure.
All right. How about you, Joe?
Well, I think you chose a position for them to address in the first round as corner, and I think that's one of the 2 big positions that they need, either left tackle or corner. And those are places where you want to spend your first round pick. There's, the quarterback, the cornerback, the left tackle, and the edge rusher. Yeah. And I don't think they can go wrong going offensive tackle or corner. I guess they're going to probably wait and see if they can buy up and get somebody, or if I think Deontay Banks might be a little high for 17. They might be able to trade back. I think Tampa might be willing to move up. I think the Bills have clearly shown an interest in moving up. I've even seen New Orleans all the way down at 29th showing an interest in moving up. And they're not going to get any higher than where the Steelers are based on what they'd have to mortgage to get it. So I think that, JPJ or Banks would be a good fit. I think both those guys are, Tomlin kind of players. I mean, obviously Porter's, a Pittsburgh Steeler at heart, and I'd hate to see him slide past us and land in Baltimore, which many mock drafts have him going. They need a corner badly. Yeah, so I can see that happening. That would be like the worst of the worst. But then in that second round, I mean, I like Jordan Addison, Kenny Pickett, but the problem is the Steelers really don't need receivers. Right. I mean, they just traded for Allen Robinson. We have Calvin Austin last year. That's a lot faster. And Addison, for what it's worth, really didn't do very well last year. He did not do the Biletnikoff stuff. He had a good year, but he was basically the 2nd or 3rd receiver for Caleb Williams out in USD. Now they were an embarrassment of riches there. And he was just playing, but he was playing in a similar conference to the ACC and the Pac-12. And he didn't perform. Now, he did get a little injured. And when he came to the combine, he ran a 4.54 and a 4.45. So that's a 4.5 flat if you'd average the 2. And so he's not as fast as everybody thought he was going to be. And he doesn't have the prototypical, DK Metcalf. So if you're looking at the 2 types of receivers that are sexy in NFL right now, you've got the DK Metcalf, the Megatron kind of guys that are 6'4", big body guys that can still run a 4.5 and can box you out, post up and get a ball because they've got length, and they've got that wingspan to grab it. Addison doesn't have that, and he doesn't have the speed of an AB or someone inside that's gonna run you down. He's not to throw Avi a bone here. He's not a Hill or a Waddle. He's a 4.5 guy. But what he really is a crisp route runner with good hands and excellent instincts. I think he should be a 2nd round draft pick. Should the Steelers use their 2nd round draft pick on him? I would say no, unfortunately. I think the Steelers have made a career on drafting guys in the 2nd and 3rd round. Pickens last year, before him, rewinding the clock, you got Mike Wallace, you've got AB on day 3, you got Hines Ward in the 3rd round. The Steelers have found gems later in the draft. And, look, am I going to be upset if they take Jordan Addison at that number 32 pick? No. I mean, I'm a big Addison fan because I'm a Pitt guy, and I'd love to see him reunited with Kenny. I just think that pick would be better spent if we don't get a tackle and it ends up being, Joey Porter Jr. or Deontay Banks. We need a tackle, and I think if there's a DeJuan Jones or an Anton Harrison that fall there, or even your Cody Mock, I mean, I think that might be a little high for him, but there's a lot of guys that are going to be there. I think that might be the case. Now, I will agree with Smokin Jim. I think we do need to surround this team with talent. We need to surround this quarterback with guys who are going to light it up. And maybe Addison is that guy. If I had to choose somebody, I would rather choose Jahmyr Gibbs. And these are the reasons why. I know people aren't big fans of of Matt Canada, but in that offense with him on bubble screens and jet sweeps and third down back, you've got your replacement for Benny Snell. And this is a guy that every time he touches the ball can score a touchdown. And he's likely to go either at the end of the first round or the beginning of the second round. And I know the Steelers might not need him because everybody loves Najee and to be his third year. And this is, he's gotten better and we've gotten a better offensive line. But if you're going to choose a weapon there, I would rather go Jahmyr Gibbs than Jordan Addison.
Smokin' Jim, how'd you like my draft?
I tell you what, man, I liked everybody's draft, man. Man, it's too bad to say fantasy football. We don't have 22 rounds, but I think this is the deepest year that I've seen for cornerbacks.
Right.
So with my second pick in the first round, I'm looking at a cornerback. Emmanuel Forbes from Mississippi State.
Yeah, I forgot about
14 interceptions. He's a little thin. He'll make business decisions on tackles, but he can flat out cover. But my number one rated cornerback will still be on the board with that pick in the second pick in the first round. He's 6'3", 210 pounds. He runs a 4.3140. His dad played in the NFL and the CFL for 7 years. His dad was also a 6'3" cornerback. His name is Isaiah Bolden from Mississippi State. Not Mississippi State, Jackson State, was tutored by Deion Primetime Sanders. He led the nation in kickoff return average. And he'll be there, and he got the size and the ability to match up with these big wide receivers like you guys were talking about, Metcalf and those guys. So,
all right, now let's get into something here real interesting here. I want to go over to Steeler Wire, which is a website publication for the Steelers, and they have their mock draft, and I've gone over a few on several shows, but this one I want to talk about tonight. First round, they have the Steelers taking offensive tackle Peter Skronsky from Northwestern. 2A pick, they have Jack Campbell. 2B pick, cornerback DJ Turner out of Michigan. Third round pick, they have a center named John Gaines II from UCLA. The fourth round, they have him taking a defensive tackle John Kahn from Oregon. All right, they got this. Outside linebacker. I'm sorry, DJ Johnson, outside linebacker. Then number 7, they have taken defensive back Martez Manuel from Missouri. So, what do you think of this one, guys?
Hey, Ralph,
go ahead,
Ralph,
Smokin'
hey,
Jim.
Ralph,
Go ahead.
you go on. I tell you what, man, that guy knows his stuff. But that DJ Turner from Michigan can flat out run. He wore number 5 for Michigan. I tell you what, he's not the biggest guy, but he don't mind sticking his nose in there and making the tackle, and he can flat out cover, man. He's a 4.26 40-yard dash guy, and that publication is one of the first ones I heard that even mentioned him, man. So that's one of the guys that I got very high on my list. So, man, and I'm telling you, this is a deep year for cornerbacks. You need a cornerback, you can get one.
Okay, now we're going to go into some national perspective here. And I want to ask you guys a question. We're going to start with Avi Greenwald first. Who's your pick for which quarterback you think is going to go first in the draft? Go. Are you there, Avi? Avi. Hello. I see Avi, but he's not answering me. I guess he can't hear me. Oh, he went off. He's having internet issues. Go ahead, Joe. Who do you think?
Well, I think it will be Bryce Young. I don't know if that's the right choice for anybody.
Right.
There's unfortunately, 5'10" quarterbacks don't make it in the NFL. And if you want to compare notes on that, I mean, Drew Brees was 6 foot and everybody thought he was small, and that's why he fell to the second round. And he's a Hall of Fame guy. Bryce Young has a lot of football IQ. He's done well at Alabama. all quarterbacks do well in Alabama, but if you want to look at small quarterbacks and what happens to the NFL, you don't have to go that much further. You can look at a different Alabama quarterback and see what's happened to Tua Tagovailoa over the last couple of years. Now, look, I'm not an NFL. I'm not Frank Reich. You know what I mean? That's who he wants to choose. And he has faith in him. Then, who am I to say no? I think he goes first overall, though. And for what it's worth, I just don't think this quarterback class is very good, at least day one. There are guys in there that have some potential. The potential has to be realized. The Anthony Richardson phenomenon that happened at the combine and afterwards. I mean, the guy's only played 13 games and has a 53% completion rate. He's not a very good passer, and he's a one read and run kind of guy. If you give him 2 years on the bench and he learns the game and understands what he's doing, then he might be the best in this draft. And Will Levis, same thing. I mean, he couldn't beat out a 6-year senior at Penn State, had a transfer to Kentucky, where he was 6-5. It's the Malik Willis phenomenon from last year. Everybody thought Malik Willis had this one heck of a gun, and anybody could throw it without pressure in their face to a wide open receiver in a combine in a dome without any wind or fans or anything like that in shorts. If there's a certain thing that you can get from that and other things you can't. And, Will Levis has proven, in his collegiate career that he needs more grooming. He's got the arm for it. He's got the size, and people see him as the next Josh Allen. I can't disagree that the guy's got the prototypical quarterback body and arm. It's exactly what you want. But I just don't know if it's going to work out. And, CJ Stroud, for what it's worth, I hate to say Ohio State quarterback, but Ohio State quarterbacks scheme their offense in a way that gives them an advantage, and they've got a dominating offensive line. But when you put pressure on them, just go back to that Michigan game. He didn't look all that good. And so even though I think he's got I think he's the best in this class. And I know that people are putting Hendon Hooker in that. Hendon Hooker's 25 years old. By the time he takes the field for an NFL team, he's going to be 26, on his way to 27. And in that Tennessee offense, there were no routes run. I mean, it was basically Jalen Hyatt running, posts and fly routes every time. And just, it's just he benefited from the system he was in there. Does that mean he's going to be an NFL caliber quarterback? Frankly, I don't see this class. If you want to talk about quarterbacks, look at 2024. You've got Caleb Williams. You've got Drake May. You've got Quinn Ewers coming out of Texas who could throw a ball through a car wash and not get it wet. You've got even Joe Milton. If he could figure out the game, Tennessee, that guy, he might also sneak into the first round next year. And maybe even J.J. McCarthy from, I say this again, go blue, my Michigan Wolverines. I think next year's class is so much better than this year's class. And look, I know these teams are in a situation where they've got to take a run at these guys, but I just see it as maybe one or two of these guys jump up, and Richardson and Levis a year and a change from now, maybe they can do a Jalen Hurts thing, and they've got the talent to do it. But right now they don't have the game to play. The other guys, I think what you've seen is what you're going to see with them when you get them into a pro uniform is mediocrity.
Smokin' Jim, who do you think's going to go first?
Well, I tell you what, man, I agree with everything what was just said. I've said when he won the Heisman Trophy that Bryce Young would be an NFL bust. If there was 22 rounds in the draft, I still wouldn't draft him. But I think that the first pick will probably be the Ohio State kid.
CJ Stroud, yeah. Okay. My quarterback that I like, and this might sound weird, Dorian Thompson-Robinson. The reason I like him, I watched him in the Sun Bowl play against Pitt. Okay. He did a really good job in the East-West Shrine game. Steelers talked to him. He not only can play quarterback, but he can play wide receiver, and he can return kicks and punts. We need some help at return kick and punt. We lost Steven Sims, Gunnar Olowski or Aluski or Jabuski or whatever his last name is. He seemed to have Crisco fingers, and we didn't do much with the waiver either, who was there the year before. So I mean, we got to get somebody in here that's going to be consistent. And I think Dorian Thompson-Robinson is a perfect pick in the last round too. And I forgot to put that on my sheet because I think he's he can grow. You can wait for him to grow. He can be the third string quarterback. If you need him to play wide receiver, I know Matt Canada can come up with some trick plays to put him in the game. And I know they have Austin coming back possibly. So here we are. Let's see how I would that's my quarterback. I like Hendon Hooker. Max Dugan would be a good 7th round pick quarterback for a third string quarterback because he was predicted to go in late rounds anyway. So why not? So that's where I go with my pick for quarterback. I think that happened. I think Richardson could go pretty high. My friend Peter Blake down in Tampa has a bet out with Harry the Greek, who's been on this program once, and Peter Blake is bet Harry a steak dinner that Richardson goes in the top 10. So we'll see if he does. Tampa Bay might take him because they even though they have Baker Mayfield, Kyle Trask, I think they probably need to get a quarterback to grow, start through the system and get them going. They have a new offensive coordinator, the former quarterbacks coach of Seattle. So let's see what happens with this stuff here in Tampa as well. All right, let's go into some other perspectives here as far as the Steelers and the rest of the NFL goes. Let's talk about Denver for a minute. Some of the guys that got new coaches, some of the teams have new coaches. Let's talk about Denver. Sean Payton and his assistant head coach is Mike Westhoff, who I had the privilege of interviewing here. Former special teams coach with Sean Payton down in New Orleans. He also was with the Jets. He's one of the #1 special teams gurus in the NFL, Mike, and he is now Sean Payton's assistant head coach. Where do you guys think, Joe and Smokin Jim, where do you guys think, we'll start off with you, Smokin Jim, where do you think Denver's going to go this year?
Well, I'll tell you what, if they can resurrect Russell Wilson's career, their offense will be very, very potent. Sean Payton is an offensive guru. He knows how to get production out of the quarterback and out of the offense. The unfortunate thing is they gave up so much over the years that I don't think that they can be, I don't think they can make a run in that particular division. That division is too deep with Kansas City and San Diego and those guys over there, man. So, but I do think that Russell Wilson still got a little bit in the tank, and I look for him to be the comeback player of the year this year.
Joe, what do you think about Denver?
I think Denver's going to have a tough year. I think Sean's there. I don't think there's any expectation that they do anything this year except get better.
Right. And they're owned by Walmart.
Pardon?
They're owned by Walmart.
Yeah, but it's the fact that there's a few things at play here. One, they don't have many draft picks because of the trade to get Russell Wilson last year, and Wilson's another year older. He didn't, obviously take to the offense last year. Peyton has a way with quarterbacks, though, and I can see him getting better. There's rumors that they may want to move on from Cortland Sutton or Jerry Jeudy. I could see one of those guys getting traded, and maybe Denver ends up finding their way into the first or second round or having an additional pick in the second round, I should say, but getting into the first round, with a trade, I think that might be a little steep for either of those guys. And then Javonte Williams has got to come back from a horrible ACL injury. I'm not sure he's going to be ready for the beginning of the season. And so even though I think Denver has a pretty good defense, their corners are, I just think they're a year away from doing anything really. I think this is another one of those years where they go, who knows, 7 wins, maybe 6 wins, maybe 8 wins. I just, in that they've got to get past San Diego. They got to get past the LA Chargers. They've got to get past the Kansas City Chiefs, and that's just not going to happen. The Raiders aren't very good, so maybe, they split a couple of games with the Raiders, but end of the day, I just don't think they're not a team to beat this year. I think they've got to kind of regroup and rebuild, and Sean's going to have runway to do that. They didn't bring him in and and move on from everything that they needed to move on to get him in. To get rid of him in a year. He's going to have runway to kind of and frankly carte blanche to change the team and remake it in his image. And I think there's going to be a lot of remaking this year.
Smoking Jim.
I'm already gave my Denver.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. Gee whiz. Wow. Okay. Avi, unfortunately, cannot come back. His internet's not working properly. So, but we'll talk to him on Friday on the External Bum podcast. So, sorry to hear about Avi. Had to go off the air. All right. Next, we're going to talk about the sorriest team in the whole world, the Houston Texans. DeMarco Ryan is their new head coach. Smoking Jim, go ahead.
Well, if you want a great massage, you go to Houston, baby. Hey, listen, man, it's really sad because they had everything in place. They was building. They had a great wide receiver. They had a great quarterback. Everything was in place in Houston, and now, man, I tell you what, man, it seems like every year they're firing their coach. I don't know, man. It looks like somebody did. They may move that franchise out of Houston, man, into a different city. But they got a long way to go. Let's see what they do with the first draft pick this year.
Well, you know something. I'm going to go like this with Houston. That's as far as I'm going to go. So, all right. Next, we're going to talk about the Indianapolis Colts. Their new coach is Frank Reich. Joe, go ahead.
The Colts have got a lot of rebuilding to do, right? And it looks like they're going to start at the quarterback position. I think if they sit where they sit, there's a chance they can get C.J. Stroud, Will Levis, or Anthony Richardson. I know there are teams talking up to trade with Houston or the Arizona Cardinals to get in front of them. I think it'd be too expensive for Tennessee to do, but I thought it was too expensive for Carolina to do, to go up and try to get one of these quarterbacks too earlier. So I think that they've got to find their quarterback of the future. I think if they get a Levis or a Richardson, they sign Gardner Minshew, and so Minshew will give them at least a year to kind of tutor them and let them hold a clipboard, to use an old time slogan, on the sideline, and get a little better, a little seasoning, and maybe some spot play. I don't expect much from them this year, but I think that's where they've got to go, and we'll see if they actually trade up and give up a day 2 pick to get into the second slot or the third slot to stay ahead of Tennessee or someone else who wants to trade up. Like, I've even heard the Raiders might be interested in a Will Levis or an Anthony Richardson. So, there's a lot of talk. A lot of that might be, just misinformation before the draft, and people are trying to get people to spend picks and go in different directions and things like that. But I don't expect much from the Colts this year, even with the resurgent Jonathan Taylor, even perhaps with a resurgent offensive line. They just don't have a quarterback, and teams that don't have a quarterback don't do very well in the league.
Yeah, I don't think, Joe and Smoking Jim, I'm not a big fan of these coordinators that left the Eagles to get these head coaching jobs. I think it's too soon. Jonathan Gannon, I don't think he realizes what he's up against down in Arizona. And then you got Shane Steichen, because they were in the Super Bowl and they were coordinators under Nick Sirianni, and Philly was good. Okay. Well, you know what? That's just 2 years, and that's it. I mean, and already they're head coaches. I don't know what they can do, but I think it's going to take a while for them to do, because I don't believe that they're that good yet. And if they surround themselves with some good assistants, I think they could be okay. What's your thoughts, Smoking Jim?
Yeah, I agree 100% what you said, brother.
All right. How about you, Joe?
First-year coaches, there's not a lot of expectation for, right? I mean, they're usually first-year coaches because something bad happened the year before. And these guys are stepping into teams that need to rebuild, right? And I'll use Arizona. In the case of Arizona, they've got a quarterback that just hasn't panned out. Another one of these first overall guys that are just too small to play the game and are injury prone. And even though he's lightning, and if you have a fantasy football team, he's great for about 6 weeks until he gets injured. Right. But he's not a professional quarterback. and will not take this team any further than what it is. And they're stuck with him with this monster contract because that's the best quarterback they've had since Kurt Warner. And they got Warner at the end of his career and ended up, making it into a Super Bowl and losing to the Steelers over a dozen years ago. But, my point is, these guys need time to rebuild, and Arizona is likely going to have to do that on defense. Some of these other teams that are drafting in the top 8, top 6, same thing. They're going to be doing, the same stuff. I mean, there's just rebuild. So, it's hard to expect much from a first-year coach. And I think the exceptions to the rules are what happened in Minnesota last year. They overachieved with their new coach, or in Miami where they also overachieved with their new coach. And you got to give these guys a little bit of time to turn it around and give them a couple of seasons with drafts and getting their staff together and getting the athletes that they want into play.
Let me ask you this, guys. Which coach do you think is going to have the best season? And I'll tell you who I think. I think it's going to be Frank Reich. Go ahead, Smokin' Jim.
I tell you what, man. Frank Reich's done it before. I think he put together a great staff, and so I'll have to agree with you.
Yeah, I the reason I'm taking him is because he has Jimmy Caldwell as his assistant head coach and offensive assistant.
Yeah.
So right there is some good coaching right there, Jimmy Caldwell. So I mean, and I think he even brought in Pep Hamilton too. So if he brings in them two guys, Frank Reich's stacking it up, and that's good. You know what I mean? So what do you think, Joe?
I think there's a couple of wild cards out there, right? If you take the top 5 or 6 coaches that could be named coach of the year every single year out of the mix, I think some names that people might be interested in talking about are Robert Saleh from the Jets. I mean, the Jets have really built a strong defense. They had an excellent draft last year. They've set themselves up to maintain a pace of adding additional young talent this year, including on the offensive line, in the middle of round 1. And then they added, a 4-time MVP quarterback who, granted, is long in the tooth, in Aaron Rodgers, but you put him around some of that talent. He's got Garrett Wilson. I mean, they I know they traded Elijah Moore, but they went out and got Alan Lazard for him. They likely might address that also in the second wave of free agency or down the road with an additional draft pick to get another receiver in there for him. And then Breece Hall and Michael Carter make a great 1-2 punch for them. Now, I know Breece Hall got injured last year in the middle of what could have been a really remarkable rookie season. But if they get and expend their first-round pick on an offensive lineman to help Mekhi Becton, who's trying to come back from injury and has really been sidelined, if they go out and they can get a Broderick Jones, or they can get a Darnell Wright in that first round and plug them in on the right side, I think that even a Peter Skoronski that will give them positional flexibility, a guy that can play tackle but can also swing inside to guard, might also help these guys out. And I think that will help Aaron Rodgers do well. And I realize that's a very competitive division. You've got the Bills and the Pats and the Dolphins in that division. And I wish Avi was still on the call, because I'm sure he'd have an opinion on that too. But I think if I had to pick a wild card, I would say Saleh, just because I think he's set up nicely to do with that in the AFC. And I also in the NFC, I hate to say this name because it makes me gag, but Pete Carroll. I think that they've got a really nice. They did a really nice draft last year by adding some pieces in there, including Kenny Walker. They really built up that offensive line. Geno Smith showed that he's at least serviceable, if not a little bit above average, in the twilight of his career. They re-signed him to a team-friendly deal. They've got excellent receivers, and it looks like they might address receiver, and I think that might be a place you see Jordan Addison land at their 20th pick in round 1. And I think at the top of the draft, they're more than likely going to grab a Jalen Carter, or if Tyree Wilson slips to them, or Will Anderson slips to them, their defense will be right back into it. And we've all seen Pete Carroll do very, very well. And I think that in that division, they got to get through the door of the San Francisco 49ers. But I think that again, this is an outside sort of wild card pick. I'm not picking the obvious names here. I'm trying to find somebody that people might not pick. I think he's a wild card to watch in the NFC.
Okay, great. Smoking Jim, what's your thoughts?
I already answered that question, I think.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
With Frank Wright. Yeah.
Yeah, one other thing I wanted to bring up here. I know I'm getting a little off the topics here. Pirates are down 8-7 in the ninth inning.
Wow, they were up big at one time.
Yeah, well, the nice thing is, Underwood pitched a guy and he hit into a double play, and we were able to stop a bases load and turn it into another run. So that was good. That's getting better. So we'll, with the Pirates. Anyway, all right, guys. Let's. We still have about 15 minutes left in the show here, but we're going to talk some more about this draft a little bit and some of these teams. I think Arizona's Jonathan Gannon. I think he doesn't realize what he stepped into, and then Shane Steichen. He's got a long way to go at Indianapolis. I think that Frank Reich will probably be the one quarterback. And Joe, you're right about the NFC. I think the two toughest teams I think this year in the NFC are Seattle and Dallas. Now, I don't like Dallas, but you know what? The truth to be told, Dallas is always in there these days in the playoffs. The rest of these teams, I don't know, but I don't think the NFC is weak. The AFC's been strong for a while now, and it looks like it's going to be the same way again this year. We're going to find out what happens in this draft. I think that some of these players that are highly talented, I believe Joe and Smoke and Jim will agree with me. Some of them might fall. So, Joe, let's start with you. Who do you think might fall?
Well, Osiris Torrance, the offensive guard from Florida,
Right?
he's a road grader of a guard. I mean, if he gets his hands on you, he's moving you. I think he could be the next David DeCastro in many respects, but I think he might also slide to the second round. I mean, inside lineman, that interior lineman, that has been devalued over the years. And even though I think he's deserving of a first round grade, he might slide in the same way DeCastro slid to the Steelers at 26 or 28 or whatever it was, a dozen years ago. And I think he'll be a real value pick for someone at the end who wants to add something for their run game. I also think, on the defensive side of the ball, the guy that I've marked as a slider, and I can't figure it out. And I would love for the Steelers to pick him and top pick in the second round is Keely Ringo. That guy was nothing but dominant at Georgia, and I realized that you get him into combines and you get him into personal workouts, and he might not be as smooth out of his breaks as Christian Gonzalez, but that guy has size, speed to spare, good tackler, is not going to have any problems. Coming up and playing press coverage, and I think that guy is somebody that should be a first round pick. And up until some of these personal workouts, was the odds on favorite to be the number one corner off the board. And now we're talking about him going late first round behind guys like Emmanuel Forbes. There's like 166 pounds. I don't know how anybody can survive playing in the NFL at 166 pounds. They're going to have to give that guy some PB&J, stick him in a room and get him up to at least 180 before he takes the field. That's not good, right? Like, they've got to do something there, but Ringo's got all the talent in the world. And, I think both of those guys, obviously SEC players, but for whatever reason, their draft stock has slipped. And, I hope for both their cases, they're first round guys, because I believe they're first round talents. But if either of those guys are sitting there and I'm drafting at 32 like the Steelers are, it's hard to look away from that. Same with Jahmyr Gibbs. I mean, I can't say it enough. I mean, he's such an exciting, explosive, sudden player that even though the Steelers might not need that, that's like best available athlete. You add that to your team, Kenny is going to be smiling ear to ear.
Oh, there you go. Smoking Jim, who do you think falls?
Ooh, man, that's a real good question, man. I think some of these outstanding running backs, it's a good running back class. I think some of the running backs is going to fall. For some reason, the running back position has been devalued. I think the kid from Tulane, Spears, is a pretty good one. I would love for the Pittsburgh Steelers to get lucky and get Izzy.
Izzy.
Like the third or fourth round. But I think that some of these outstanding running backs is going to fall.
Oh yeah, I think so too. That'll be the case. Okay, Now that we went into who falls, who's the sleepers that could rise? We'll start off with you, Smokin' Jim.
Well, I tell you what, man, he's not really a sleeper, but I mean, how can you pass on a guy? He don't have the measurables. He doesn't run. You know, there's a such thing as football speed. He got football speed. I've seen him return a punt about 85 yards for a touchdown. Nobody gained anything on him. He can play every position in the secondary. He's unbelievable, and he just happens to come from the same school that produced Mika Fitzpatrick. But Brian Branch from Alabama, I tell you what, man, whoever gets him is going to get a hellacious football player, and it would be hard for me to pass on him with the 32nd pick if he's there.
Okay, yeah, I think Parker Washington from Penn State rises. I don't think he'll fall. I think Jordan Addison's going to fall. I think a few of these quarterbacks might fall. I think it's going to be a surprising draft. You know, a lot of times we sit there and go, "Oh, well, so and so is going to take a quarterback, or so and so is going to take this person," and then they end up falling. I like Ole Miss's wide receiver Jonathan Mingo. I think you know, he might be somebody that might sit there for someone to get. He's a pretty decent quarterback or a wide receiver. I like that kid out of Princeton. He's a wide receiver too. I like him. I can't remember his name off the top of my head right now. But you know, I think he might rise a little bit. But you know, as far as falling goes, I think Jordan Addison's going to fall, and I think one or two of these quarterbacks that's in the draft are going to fall, because the way I look at the quarterback situation is there's a lot of quantity, but not a lot of quality. You see what I'm saying? So Pirates lost 8-7. So there you are, guys. The winning streak's over. So there we are. But anyway, Joe, as we get ready to wrap up here, we got about 8 minutes. What is your final thoughts for the night?
Well, you know, I think the Steelers are well positioned in this year's draft, not just because they have that Chicago pick at the top of the second round, but because the areas of need for them match up with the areas of depth in this draft. So, you know, you can get solid offensive line and defensive line talent in rounds 2 through 4. You can get solid corner and defensive back talent in rounds 2 through 4. There are names that we haven't even talked about
Right.
that the Steelers could grab, you know, later in the draft with that third or fourth round pick. There's a wide receiver from Purdue named Charlie Jones, who's, you know, would make a great slot guy. There are guys out there. You mentioned one before with Cody Mocker. There might be, you know, Matthew Bergeron, or you might be able to get DeJuan Jones in round 2. You know, and I think all of that really matches up well with what they need. So I think that if Omar Khan plays his cards right and Andy Weidel plays his cards right, they're going to end up filling a bunch of those spots that we all know for the last couple of years have been ignored. You know, it might not be a sexy draft. They might get a couple of big uglies in 2 of those 3, you know, first picks overall. And I think later in the draft, they'll just go and address the receiver position and inside linebacker position, you know, in rounds, you know, 3 and later, and or if they collect picks by moving, you know, back and stuff like that, we'll see that. But I think that the Steelers will benefit from that. I will say that my sleeper pick, because we didn't get to me on that one, I want to throw this out there,
I'm
is a
sorry, Joe.
cornerback named Darius Rush. Darius Rush, he didn't get a lot of play because he was across the way from Cam Smith at South Carolina. And Darius Rush did nothing but impress at the Senior Bowl. He dominated. He was defensive player. He had interceptions, pass blocks, came up to tackle. Then people wanted to see how well he did at the combine, and the guy ran you know, a mid 4.3 40, came in at 6'2", had all those intangibles, and he literally outplayed Cam Smith at that Senior Bowl game. And that was the guy that everybody wanted to see. And here's this other guy on the other side of the field that no one paid attention to until they got him in the Senior Bowl against talent like that. And that's a guy, based on what we've seen at the Senior Bowl and what we've seen at the Combine, might also be someone that you could steal in one of those later rounds and address that as we go forward. So those are just a few of my final thoughts before we get done with the show tonight.
Okay, Lindy's Sports here for the draft rates this wide receiver at number 11, the one from Princeton. It's a hard name to pronounce, but I think it's Adrea Kosalovas, and he plays for Princeton. He's a wide receiver. I think he's going to be a sleeper pick. They're predicting him to go in the third round. We'll see who he goes. And like I said, I like Parker Washington also from Penn State. They have him rated at number 12. I think them guys might sneak up somewhere as well. Okay, Smokin' Jim, any final thoughts for you as we get ready to wrap up the show?
And I agree with Rush. Rush was unbelievable, not only at the Senior Bowl game, but the practices. I tell you what, I got to piggyback off of you, Ralph. I tell you what, I'm not sold necessarily on Kenny Pickett. I hope he is the franchise quarterback.
Right.
But later on, if he's available, I got to take Dorian Thompson-Robinson.
Yes.
You know, I know the Steelers don't have a 5th or 6th round pick,
right,
but somewhere I got to take him. 10,000 yards passing, 88 touchdowns, another 2,000 yards rushing, and 28 touchdowns. 6'2", 210 pounds. He could be somebody if Kenny Pickett don't pan out, that you have a quarterback. You're not like the Giants that you're backed in the corner. You got to pay somebody a whole lot of money because you don't have anybody behind them. And my sleeper would be, and he's moving up fast, one of the best football players I ever seen, played mainly on the outside, but I got him as an inside linebacker, Isaiah Land from Florida A&M. He's
Earl Holmes is called.
Earl Holmes can't coach, but he could play football. But this guy got a lot of Chad Brown in him, man. He just makes plays. He's explosive, man. He's about 6'5", and he's only around 235. But I tell you what, man, he's just a playmaker. He's a tackling machine, and he get to the quarterback. And that's my sleeper. Whoever gets him getting a good football player.
All right, Joe, do you have any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Yeah, I think that this is a year that we get to see Kenny Pickett grow. I think we saw a little bit of that at the end of the year. If you continue to have talent built around him and you give him better line play, I think, all the pundits at the end of the year were saying, yeah, Kenny could be one of those guys who crawls into the top 10 quarterbacks, this year. And I think that on the defensive side, last year we had the most expensive defense in the league. I don't think that changes a whole heck of a lot this year. I know we've moved on from a few guys and stuff like that, but this is a place where I think that they can really make a difference with a corner and the right kind of defensive tackle. If they play their cards right, they might be able to get them in that second round slot, especially if they address offensive line with the first pick that they've got at 17, or if they trade up to get somebody. I think that's the way they'll go.
Okay. My final thoughts are this. I think the Steelers did a really good job with free agency. They don't have to go into the draft panicking. They can pick and choose, and they can kind of pick their own cards. So we're going to see what happens with this draft. It's the first one for the numbers cruncher, Omar Khan and Andy Weidel. So we're going to find out what happens, and we'll see what mediocre Mike has to say as well. My final thoughts here are tonight, and I have a very special announcement to make. The announcement is this, and that is starting June 20th, and it will be every Tuesday from 5 to 6 p.m. on Beaver County Radio. Myself and Smokin' Jim Frazier are going to be debuting with Sports Corner Radio. So we're going to be on the radio, Beaver County Radio. I want to thank the folks there for the opportunity that they're giving myself and Smokin' Jim to put this sports program on the radio. And I want to say this, the Forgotten Son is gone. So here we are. I'm back on the radio, and the Forgotten Son is gone. And Smokin' Jim, it's going to be a pleasure to be on the radio. And Joe, you're invited anytime to come on the show. So you know what I mean? So I want to thank you.
I'm already looking forward to it.
Thank you for being here tonight, and thank you for inviting me Thursday. Talk about your draft party coming up on Thursday.
Yeah, we're having a launch party for the magazine. It's a Draft 412 launch party. We rented out Stage AE. Merrill Hodge is our guest speaker. It benefits the Jerome Bettis, the Bus Stops Here Foundation. We sold out the event. We have over 30 sponsors of the event, so have to thank people like Calientes and Condados and iHeartRadio and Bet Rivers and just too many to mention, and we've been thanking them all week on social media. Jerome's doing the same, and then
Right.
afterwards, you're going to see them as we launch the site on May 1st. And I'd encourage anybody who wasn't able to get a ticket this year to stay in touch with us, because next year we likely will have to have a larger venue to hold folks that we just had. This was a first year event. We weren't sure how well it was going to go, and the inside portion of Stage AE works out really well
It's
against that
beautiful
late
there.
April weather. And I think that everyone that comes they're not going to leave hungry, they're not going to leave thirsty, and they're going to leave with a nice sort of gift bag and have a good
there you
time
go.
listening to everybody
I
talk
can't
draft,
wait.
and hopefully the Steelers win something.
I can't wait. Smokin' Jim, what's your plans for the draft?
Hey, congratulations, Joe. Man, that sounds good, man. Proud of you, man.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Sounds like
likewise.
a great
Appreciate it, man.
event. You know, I worked on the draft. That's my time to make a little extra money, man. So my phone will be ringing, and I'll be doing what I do. So.
Well, there you go, Smokin' Jim. Thank you so much. Also, Smokin' Jim, I can't wait for June 20th. I'm so excited. I'm pinching myself. You know what I mean? Because I can't wait to get our radio show started. Anyone that's interested in being a sponsor for any of our shows here, you're welcome to call 412-990-8448. Please call that number. Give me a call. Let me know what you're if you're interested in. Also call DJ Fun today, 412-537 or 545-4317. DJ Fun, parties, weddings, and everything else you need for a DJ. On behalf of Joe KUKLIS and Smokin' Jim Frazier, everybody have a great night. Thanks for being here. Thanks for watching. And everyone have a good one and be safe. Thank you.